Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition, and this week it comes from Christopher Beesley from the Liverpool Echo, the Everton writer down on Merseyside. Christopher, thank you very much for popping onto the podcast. How are you keeping?
All right, thanks. I think I'm actually looking a bit black and white here. Believe it or not, this shirt and tie I've got on is actually lilac, but I think the way you've got the lighting in the studio, typically black and white, just for you lads.
Yeah, I wasn't going to mention anything, but it's nice to see you putting on the colours of Newcastle United. Newcastle travelled down to Goodison Park on Thursday to, of course, face Everton. And as I said on yesterday's episode of the match preview, I'm not really sure how to feel about this one because you've got one side who are terrible at home and you've got one side who are terrible on the road. However, as Sean Dyche said after the win against Nottingham Forest, Everton have been galvanised by the points deduction. Are you expecting to see more of a change at home in the next few weeks, given what's happened over the last month or so?
Yeah, Everton's home form, as you say, has been the Achilles heel this season, which is ironic given the way things have been in recent seasons. They've not actually played too badly. To be fair, they had a series of games in the first month or so of the season when they created lots and lots of chances and didn't take them and were beaten. And Deitch himself described it as unfathomable, the fact that they didn't get the results from those games. Manchester United one was a strange one because, of course, that was the first game after the points deduction. And they say it reminded me a lot of actually Newcastle United at home last season for reasons I'll go on to explain. But in that, you obviously had the huge crowd reaction to that, the protest through the streets before the game, and everyone was sort of really fired up for it. But then they're totally undone by a wonder goal a mere 3 minutes into the game, sort of burst the bubble. So it was important that they got a result after that, in which they did at Nottingham Forest. But yeah, that the home form has been strange, really. Like I said, it's not always that they've played too badly, but compared to the way they've been on the road, they just haven't got the results. And yes, so it reminded me a lot of that Newcastle game back in the spring when Everton had their big coach welcome that night and sort of threw everything at it, but they still couldn't get a result and were comprehensively beaten by Newcastle that night.
Yeah, a good performance by Newcastle that day. Alexander Isak with what should have been the assist of the century, but it was actually not given to him, and Jacob Murphy got the nice little tap in. But on the atmosphere, because we were talking last week, me and a colleague, about the visit of Manchester United to St James's Park and how St James's Park is a cauldron of noise. And my colleague said, yeah, but Man United have gone to Galatasaray, welcome to hell. And then they were Everton, a few days before, and don't tell me that those atmospheres weren't hard to deal with. But we were specifically talking about the protests at Goodison Park and how they're directed towards the Premier League. And do you think that's got to change? Because I think when you're directing your anger at the Premier League, you're not directing it at the opposition, and sometimes that can work in the opposition's favour. I don't know what you think about
that. I think it just would have been very different if it just hadn't been that Manchester United scored a worldie just like a couple of minutes into the game. It just sort of changed the whole picture, and we sort of saw it at Nottingham Forest, so it wasn't a hangover for that. I think from Newcastle's perspective, that trip to Goodison was really important learning curve for them. Like you say, as a Daily Mail reporter, Dominic King, he's covered Everton and Liverpool over the years for ourselves at the Echo, and then before he went on to the Mail. And he's seen it all in Merseyside football. By his own admission, he's a Liverpool fan. But he said that night at Goodison when Newcastle were last there, he said, that's the closest you're going to get to replicating the kind of atmosphere at Napoli. He said that sort of raw emotion, you're not going to get that anywhere else in Europe. And this is a Liverpool fan speaking. When the Everton fans are like that. And that was a great sort of achievement for Newcastle on that night to sort of go there and, like you say, ahead of the atmospheres Newcastle have been experiencing and will have to experience in the Champions League in Europe this season. So it was really deflating from Everton's point of view because their fans gave so much. I've been there in those, I was going to say 2 times. It's now 3 times they've gone the last day of the season where they've needed a result to stay up. And, even some of those atmospheres, although they were amazing, it wasn't quite the way it was against Newcastle United, where the fireworks were going off and all of that kind. So for Newcastle, Newcastle still got the result there, and they were able to do it on the night. So ultimately, it's the players who have to do it. There's only so much, whether it's a partisan crowd from Everton, whether it's a partisan crowd from Newcastle. Ultimately, it's down to the players, and it certainly helps with what the fans are doing with the emotion. But the players, the fans can't score a goal for you. They can give you all the encouragement in the world, but it's down to those 11 lads on the pitch.
It certainly is. I mean, what are you expecting in terms of the atmosphere on Thursday? Are you expecting more protests? Are you expecting, like we said, the attention to shift onto the opposition? Perhaps what will Newcastle be walking into?
Yeah, I think they're going to be keeping it up against the Premier League, and expect to see those cards which have been en masse. They're pink in colour. They say They have the Premier League symbol on them. It says corrupt. They were held up almost. I was going to say to a man, to a woman, to a child. At the Manchester United game, I mean, certainly it looked like 95% of the home crowd were holding them up. And to be fair, a lot of people took them to the City ground last weekend as well. I'm sure that will keep up. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be the usual crack and the banter with the Newcastle United fans. Of course, there's always the added element of Jordan Pickford whenever Newcastle United are the opposition. I mean, I remember the season before last when Pickford didn't even play. Masmir Begovic was in goal. The night we had the supporter tying himself to the goalpost, so we even had the additional sort of drama that came with that. But yeah, we still had the inflatables for England's number one, even though he wasn't present that night. I mean, that's an interesting sideshow. I just hope that Jordan Pickford keeps his head, because obviously there's been times, I remember that infamous game up at St James's Park where he lost his head and Newcastle came back to win 3-2. He was very assured at the weekend with his kicking, with his handling. He didn't have any saves to make until late on, but a couple of really good saves at the end as Forest were pushing. It was a very accomplished performance from Pickford at the weekend. So I'm hoping from an Everton point of view he can replicate that, because we all know what goes on with the pantomime sideshow whenever he's up against Newcastle. But just hope he can keep his cool. But yeah, I'm sure there'll be a great atmosphere.
Yeah, no doubt there'll be a dinosaur or two in the away end. Newcastle United fans always seem to have them in abundance whenever they're playing Everton. Now, we are recording this ahead of Sean Dyche's press conference later this afternoon. What do you think he's going to be like? How is he going to approach this game? How does he look upon Newcastle? Is he looking at it as, this is a game we can win, or is it, maybe a point is the best scenario?
I think Everton should be looking at the potential to win any home game. Like you're saying, their form has been poor. Needs to improve that home form. It would have been the case even before the 10-point deduction. It's an improving Everton team, despite obviously what the current league table says, because of that points deduction, a much more resolute side than last season or the year before. And Dyche's methods of getting across, he always remains very grounded. He's aware of the fact that every game in the Premier League's a tough game. It's not just a cliche, and everyone's aware that this is a very talented Newcastle team who've been on an upward curve the last year or so. Okay, they've got a difficult patch at the moment in terms of fitness of the players, but it's still going to be a very competitive outfit. It's interesting that they've got 2 home games in the space of 3 days, with Chelsea on the Sunday, because it seems very seldom you can get 6 points from any sort of double header like that. It's a bit of a sort of difficult situation to have 2 games like that in close proximity and expect to get results from both of them, especially a team like Everton. They're not a vintage Everton outfit at the moment, albeit an improving one. I would imagine he thinks, even privately, perhaps it's a better moment than most to possibly play Newcastle. But it's certainly no gimme, is it? And I think both sets of players are going to be expecting a tough encounter. But Dyche just he seems to keep things on the level where he calls it the noise, which sort of surrounds the club, all the hysteria and all the shenanigans that's been going on. It's been going on a lot more than usual the last couple of years, but it's good that he's got that sort of level head, and he doesn't get too high and too low depending on how things have gone.
And I guess he'd be looking to exploit Newcastle's away record, because it is absolutely dire, and they've only beaten Sheffield United on the road. That was a fantastic 8-0 victory for the Magpies, but other than that, they've not had the best of luck. There's been a couple of games where they really should have hung on, and they've been unlucky, but Eddie Howe has said it needs to improve, and it does for where Newcastle United want to go. But it would be a good opportunity for Everton to improve their home record by taking advantage of Newcastle's away record.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's strange, like you say, we can't put the finger on it why Everton's home record has been so poor. You'd say the same with Newcastle on the road, given that the players that they've got, and obviously, as always, St James's Park is that big bonus for them when they're playing at home. But as you know more than anyone, the large numbers that they take with them away, you've got that passionate support wherever they go anyway. So I don't see how that can be a negative factor for them. Yeah, there's perhaps something's got to give here. There's been quite a few high scoring games I seem to remember in recent years between these two sides. Bizarrely, they always seem to be midweek as well. I don't know if Newcastle fans have picked up on that one. I'm sure they have with all the travelling they have to do. But yeah, I don't know why that always seems to be midweek. So you've got the added bonus of it being under the lights. I suppose this time of year it's probably going to be under the lights anyway. But yeah, another midweek clash. But yeah, I'm not too sure. I mean, you've seen obviously a lot more than me, but why Newcastle haven't been so prolific on the road? But yeah, maybe it's a bit of a head scratcher like Everton's home form.
Yeah, 100% is. You just don't know what the remedy is, what the solution is. I mean, like I said, they've been unlucky in certain games, but on the whole, it's been quite disappointing on the road. But we're just waiting for it to click, as I'm sure Everton are with regards to their home form. In terms of personnel for Everton, I suppose the big question mark is over Dominic CalvertLewin. He missed the game against Forest. Dyche said he was touch and go for Thursday. What are you expecting? Are you expecting to see him back in the squad?
Dyche was hopeful about it. You're never too sure, like as you know, with Eddie Howe and all the managers, they do keep their cards close to the chest, and maybe they sometimes want to put you in the wrong direction, or maybe not saying they misinformation, but they maybe paint a slightly different picture than what the reality might be. But he seemed hopeful. Dominic Calvert-Lewin, as you know, has had terrible injury problems in recent years. He played less than half of Everton's matches last season and less than half of Everton's matches the season before that. But then he's had what has been described as the factory reset this summer, and he's looking at things a bit differently. Dyche vowed to get to the bottom of Calvert-Lewin's injury problems when he first came to the club. He was very cautious with him, and maybe what at the time seemed as an over-cautious approach has actually borne fruit now in the longer term, because he'd actually started 9 games in a row before he missed the Forest game. So it's his longest run for a while, and he scored a few goals there. Looked like he's getting back to his best. I think they were kept him out as a precaution at Forest. They've been sort of keeping him wrapped up in cotton wool all week and being careful with him, and in the end they decided not to risk him. So there's a chance he could be back in Beto, his understudy. Everton's biggest summer signing, paid nearly 26 million for him. He's had to be patient, waiting for his opportunities to come. He had a big chance to score at Forest. He didn't take it. He certainly occupied their defence. A lot of strong running from him, and it just looks like he needs that bit of composure. And he might be a different player once he gets that first Premier League goal, but he's still waiting for that. So, yeah, I'm not sure. The 50-50, that one might go either way. Even once we've heard what Dyche has got to say later, we still might not know. But, yeah, I think there's a chance that Calvert-Lewin could return. And he scored a few goals against Newcastle over the year, so I'm not sure how much of that, even something like that might come into Dyche's thinking.
A talented player, and very much like Callum Wilson, though, when it comes to the injury record, you just want to see him get through the majority of his season and just see how many goals he can score, but hopefully not against Newcastle on Thursday. Dwight McNeil got the goal against Forest. It was a lovely finish, and Dyche has those players, a bit like Eddie Howe did when he first came in, that he's worked with before, that he trusts, his lieutenant, for want of a better phrase, and he seems to be getting the best out of the likes of McNeil and other players that he's worked with before.
Yeah, Dwight McNeil's one who really came on last season. He actually finished top scorer, albeit with only 7 goals for Everton last season. But 5 of those came after Dyche's appointment. I think 5 of them actually came in between from 11th of March onwards. So he certainly took off under Dyche, of course, who was his manager at Burnley, gave him his first opportunity in professional football when he was right at the start of his career. And we've been kind of waiting for that to return, because that was his first goal of this season. He got injured at pre-season and at Stoke City, so he's sort of playing catch up with his form and sort of coming back into the side. So they've missed that. They've missed McNeil's goals, and from an Everton point of view, they're hoping that, given that, like I said, 5 of those goals came in a purple patch of over a couple of months last season. They've got that busy festive schedule now that you might be able to get a few more, because you can certainly say, as you said, he can certainly strike a ball. They actually call it the paintbrush, the way he's able to sort of stroke the ball with that sweet left foot of his. And he's certainly a finisher on his day. But as he admitted himself at the City ground on Saturday evening, he wants to improve his goal output. He feels that as an attacking player, he can contribute more in that area. And Everton is certainly hoping to get him into those positions to get a few more like that.
And I'm a big fan of Doucouré in the middle. I think he's an excellent player, and he scored some important goals, not least the one that kept Everton in the league last season. Just talk to us about him, because Newcastle have got some really interesting, some really talented midfielders themselves, and we always say that's where the battle lies. But Doucouré is going to have to go up against, we would think, Bruno, Joe Linton, and probably Lewis Miley. Can he get the better of, say, Bruno in the game on Thursday, do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting one with Doucouré, because the way he pushes on. Amadou Onana's out at the moment, and he's one who Dyche was saying at the weekend, again, he might change his tune later, but he wasn't so hopeful that Amadou Onana would come back, because he's missed the last couple of games, and he's a big physical presence in the middle for Everton, so they miss him. But they've got a couple of other ones in there as well. James Garner was man of the match on Saturday. He's a very much improving young player. And at the other end of the spectrum, Idrissa Gueye, who's a veteran we all know about. But in terms of Doucouré, it was a strange one, because he'd totally fallen out of favour under Frank Lampard. There'd been a bit of a dressing room spat, and he'd actually been dropped from the squad. But when Dyche came in, Dyche, as we know, had more or less played 4-4-2 a lot of the time at Burnley, but we wondered if that was how it was going to go at Everton. First game pushes Doucouré up into a more advanced role, and Everton go 4-5-1 with Doucouré almost Tim Cahill-esque in that, playing off the front man for Everton. And like you say, he scored some really important goals. A couple at Brighton last season, the 5-1 win, which was sort of the one that teed them up for survival. And then, as you say, against Bournemouth on the last day, the actual goal that kept Everton in the Premier League, avoiding what would have been a first relegation in 72 years for the club. So, yeah, he's kept that up this season. A few more that he's chipped in with. Dyche has called him Johnny on the spot in terms of him actually just being there at the right time to get those finishing ones. He's got a great engine on him, maybe not always the easiest on the eye in terms of his movement and his technique, but really works hard in there. And anyone who's got an eye for a goal in those central midfield areas, worth the weight in gold really to the team. And he's, like I said, he's certainly become one of the key men under Dyche.
Yeah, big fan. Newcastle will have to keep him quiet. In terms of the way Everton approach this game on the field, will they sit back and try and absorb Newcastle's pressure, or will they take the game to Newcastle, do you think?
I think that's been kind of the problem with the home form, because on the road they're able to do that. They were sort of, it was a tight game at Forest, kept them at arm's length, although it was stalemate for a long time. Everton always looked like the more sort of polished, the accomplished side, and were sort of ready to hit Forest and on the break. And maybe the fact that the fans don't let them do that so much at Goodison, that could be part of the problem, that they're expected to be on the front foot. It's a bit of a quandary really for Dyche, how to get them to play effectively at Goodison Park. Of course, it's different anyway, given that Newcastle, a much more talented team than Forest, with a lot more people who can hurt you in those key areas. So that'd be an interesting one to see just how that one pans out. They're always expected to try and, if at all possible, of course, a bit different against Manchester United last time out, but to get on the front foot and to try and at least take the game to the opposition, and that's what the Goodison crowd will be expecting. But maybe when opponent, I felt Manchester United were good at actually slowing it down and just being a bit patient. That got the home fans frustrated at times. So it'd be interesting to see how both teams set up in that approach.
It certainly will. In terms of Everton's biggest strength that Newcastle will have to target and try and keep quiet, if you were sitting down with Eddie Howe and pointing it out, what would you be telling them?
I wouldn't be giving too many secrets away, but I think what is no secret. A lot of teams have said this is the physicality and the size of the Everton players. I think somebody got the tape measures out earlier this season and worked out that Everton were the tallest team in the Premier League overall. And when you got someone like Idrissa Gueye in there, maybe because some of the others really are bigger, because he'll bring the average down. But so, there's a lot of big lads. Pickford himself said that James Tarkowski's head is a great target to aim for the set pieces. So I think it's no secret that he's dangerous even in the opposition box when he gets forward. And you got the young lad Jared Bramthwaite. Newcastle fans might not have seen too much of him so far, but he's come on leaps and bounds this season. Absolute man mountain, not too far away. Obviously a Carlisle lad on the other side there. He's been a revelation this season alongside Tarkowski at the back. So he's a real presence, a real handful. But he sort of devoured a couple of big Premier League strikers so far. I mean, obviously we saw it at the weekend there, with Wood and Antonio at West Ham. Yes, so. Yeah, those big lads. I mean, you only have to see them. You know that they're a weapon from the set piece, and certainly if Calvert-Lewin's back as well. I mean, obviously he's a great aerial presence. There's probably few strikers in the Premier League who sort of can match Calvert-Lewin in the air in what he's capable of doing. So I don't think I'm giving away any state secrets when I tell you about that.
What about the weaknesses? What's the main weakness that Newcastle can exploit?
Ashley Young's been struggling at full-back, 38 years of age, Everton's oldest outfield player. He was obviously somebody who Dyche knows well. Played with him at Watford when Young was a teenager. So right at the start of his career, he's somebody that the manager's known for a long time. He's versatile. Obviously, Everton's current financial position. They've already got in big trouble with the Premier League for overspending, so they've had to turn to players like this. Somebody who's on a free transfer, and Young can come in. He can occupy both fullback positions. Can play on the flank, so he's versatile. He's somebody who Dyche trusts, but he's had some tough times this season. He got sent off in the Merseyside derby for picking up 2 bookings. Everton's main grumble there was that Konate didn't get the same thing, but I don't think there was too many complaints with the fact that Young got an early bath. And to be fair, he's given away a few free kicks in dangerous areas there. But I mean, he responded from that on Saturday, to be fair to him. He had a bit of a tough start there and did well in the end. But it's actually interesting because a lot of Everton rate Nathan Patterson, the young Scotland international right back, who is obviously in that area, and he's not getting a game. Dyche is going with Young, and of course you've got the club captain Seamus Coleman. He hasn't played since May. He's fit again now. He's chomping at the bit to return. So there's actually quite a few options there at right back, but the manager is sticking with Ashley Young at the moment.
Well, it's interesting because the man he'll be up against, if he is past fit, is Anthony Gordon, obviously the former Everton man who left under bad terms when he joined Newcastle back in January. He is Newcastle's inform player. He is scoring goals. He is creating goals for his teammates. He is giving every single fullback he's going up against an absolute torrid time. But Reece James found that out getting sent off in the game against Chelsea. If it is Ashley Young versus Anthony Gordon, are you watching the game behind your hands?
There's certainly scope for that, isn't there? Evertonians know how talented Anthony Gordon can be, but it was an interesting one because he'd done very well in very difficult circumstances the season before. But as you know, he wasn't even getting a game when at Everton, in a struggling Everton team before he came to Newcastle. But after what has been maybe they've had to show a bit of patience with him at first, he sort of blossomed this season, hasn't he? He's really come on leaps and bounds. I suppose with Gordon as well, you've obviously got his pace as well. You don't want to have a 38-year-old isolated one-on-one with somebody as quick as Gordon. So it's one that they'll have to look at. It just makes me wonder now we're talking about it, whether, after midweek, maybe it might be an opportune moment to give Ashley the night off. But yeah, I'm sure Gordon being for a hot reception from the Everton fans. I mean, Eddie Howe actually did something quite cute, didn't he, in the game last season, in that just put Gordon on for the last couple of minutes there in a game that had already been won by Newcastle, just to sort of get that one out of the way. It doesn't mean that everyone will have forgotten about Anthony Gordon now and just moved on, but that was actually probably a bit of good management from Howe, and from the players' point of view at least, just so he's had his first return at Goodison, just in the shape of a little cameo at the end of a match that Newcastle had already won comfortably. But I'm sure all I said, I imagine that they sort of the Anthony Gordon reception would probably be sort of comparable to the one that Jordan Pickford gets from the Newcastle fans.
Yeah, and you know what though? I imagine Anthony Gordon, if he is indeed playing, he'll absolutely relish that. He'll take that, and it'll probably motivate him that little bit more. But he's definitely the danger man, I think, for Newcastle United. Hopefully, from a Magpie point of view, he is past fit. All that remains to be done then, Christopher, is to get your score prediction for Thursday. How's it going to go?
We'll go with that one on. Do a same one for you as I go for on our one as well. I think Everton are due a result at home. They'd have to hope that it's a good time to play Newcastle. I've talked about all these high scoring games in recent years, but for some reason I don't possibly see it this time. So I think when Everton have won under Dyche, 6 times out of 10, it's been 1-0. So I'll try and be positive from our point of view, and I'll go for 1-0 Everton.
I've gone for a 1-1, simply because the Newcastle side that plays is likely to be the same team that started the last 2 games, and there's only been 1 substitution. If you discount Nick Pope's substitution in that game, obviously Newcastle will be missing Nick Pope. I appreciate we haven't talked about that much, but I mean, that's the old news, really. It'll be Martin Dubravka between the sticks. I suppose before I give you actually a bit more reasoning behind my prediction, just a quick one on Dubravka. Will that come into Sean Dyche's thinking that Newcastle are going to have to play a goalkeeper who's not really played any competitive football this season? He'll be maybe getting his strikers and his midfielders to perhaps shoot on sight.
It should be, but I've seen this before with Everton various times. They've not sort of got an opponent's weakness. There was a lot of talk ahead of the Merseyside derby when Andrew Robertson was missing, and to get at the understudy left back there for Liverpool, and it's something they weren't necessarily able to do. They should do. Dyche knows all about Pope, of course, doesn't he? Because he was his goalkeeper at Burnley, and knows how big a miss he'll be. So yeah, I mean, I suppose Dubravka's played at Goodison before, hasn't he? So it's not like a kid who's coming in, a rookie who hasn't experienced this before. But yeah, you'd think it was something you should do, and maybe have a crack from long distance, just see how sharp he is.
And Dyche will know about Trippier as well. Trippier's always got nice words to say about Dyche. But yeah, I'm going for a 1-1 simply because of Newcastle's away record. I mean, anyhow, today in the press conferences again said we know our away form has to improve. He said he's expecting a physical game from Everton. I just think, like I say, the fact that it's going to be the same team that has played so many minutes and he hasn't got the options to change it up, because he's not expecting Sean Longstaff back. He's not expecting Joe Willock back. It's likely to be the same team. I mean, they're going to be absolutely knackered. And it's going to be, like we say, a physical challenge against Everton. So I'm going to go 1-1. I think most Newcastle United fans would take a point. They'd like 3. But in the grand scheme of things, if you can not lose and go on to maybe beat Spurs, then it's not a bad point at all. Christopher, thank you very much for popping on to the podcast. Appreciated as always. To you guys listening, please hit follow and leave us a rating review as well. Head over to chroniclelive.co.uk where you can keep up to date with all the latest Newcastle United news.